everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Holly Adams and I am a third-year teacher. I've spent the first 2 years of my career in 7th grade math, and this year I'm transitioning into Algebra 1 at the high school level. Obviously, it's August, back to school time, and I figured I would create a ultimate survival guide, if you will, for your first day of school. Really, this applies to like the whole year, but I feel like that first day, that first week can be very overwhelming and kind of scary. So I have just 5 tips, okay? Not crazy, it's not too much, just 5 tips to make this year go smoothly. I hope to, kind of just make you feel a little bit more confident going into the year, maybe answer some questions, all that sort of stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead and dive into tip number 1, which is how you start determines your year. Just off the bat, I don't like the phrase, "don't smile until Christmas." I think that's very old school, and in most ways I am a very old school teacher, but this one I just don't really agree with. I'm a very smiley person, I'm a very friendly person, and so I feel like it would be not genuine for me to be just like super strict and not smile and all that stuff. I am a very strict teacher, but I'm gonna smile while I'm reprimanding you, if that makes sense. However, if you don't start strong and if you kind of just have like, oh, I want to just be chill, I want to be the cool teacher, the chill teacher, your class is going to walk all over you. And really, it's unfortunate because you're not gonna get like a chance to really reset the class until January. That's just the way it works. Some people have been able to like just reset on a Monday or even like middle of the week, but realistically, a whole class reset happens best after a long break. So, beginning of the year in January. You have to set the tone day 1. And I'm not saying a bad day 1 is going to ruin your entire year. That's not at all what I'm saying. Honestly, day 1 is pretty boring for a lot of people because especially in the older grades, you're going over the syllabus, you're going over school expectations, procedures. That kind of stuff is not that interesting. Of course, there are so many engaging ways to get that information across. But if that's just not the way that you roll, it's not the way that you roll. You don't have to like completely showcase every element of yourself day 1. That's not at all what I'm saying. But it is important that on day 1, you set the expectation, you set the tone, and you make sure that they know you're in charge. One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given was it's easier to change a no to a yes than it is to change a yes to a no. I absolutely love that because it's so true. Students are they will wear you down, okay? They will absolutely wear you down just to see what they can get away with, just to see what they can get. So if you tell them yes to something, it's gonna be very, very, very hard. Not impossible, but very hard to change that to a no. Because they already know that you're okay with it, or they know that you've let them in the past, or you let this class, why aren't you letting us? If you just have a consistent no across the board, then you can be the nice teacher later and change it to a yes. So for example, free seating. In my opinion, if you start the year off with free seating or you very early on have days of like free seating, it's gonna be hard to get them back into assigned seats. Obviously they're gonna do it because you're in charge, but they're gonna complain a lot versus if you just start with assigned seats and then as a reward later on, maybe you let them choose their own seats and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, versus it feeling like a punishment to go to assigned seats. That's just one of many examples, but I really do, that has stuck with me. It's easier to change a no into a yes than it is to change a yes into a no. Tip number 2, establish clear expectations and practice routines and procedures. Starting day 1, I recommend that you just write down everything that you want to happen in your classroom. Like, how do you want them to enter? How do you want them to pick up papers? What do you want them to do when they need to get up and get something? Or how should they ask to go to the bathroom? Like all of these things, just think through what you would like and narrow that down to really no more than 10 classroom rules and procedures. So for example, I only have 5 classroom rules and they're very generic, they're very broad. That way I can apply a lot to it. For example, if you have a list of 25 rules and they're all super specific and a student does something that they know they shouldn't, but it's not on the rules. You see how it can get a little crazy. Versus if, like, my number one rule, which I learned this year from one of my coworkers, learn and let others learn. That applies to so much. You don't have to say stay on task. That's learn. Let others learn. If you are distracting other people, that's against the rules. Do you see what I mean? So I prefer fewer and more generic rules that you can apply a lot of behaviors to. And then you have to explicitly teach them your procedures. I, for some reason, my first year thought that they would just know how to enter the classroom. No, they do not. You have to physically model, teach, practice all of your routines and procedures until they get it. And it's not going to happen in day one. It's probably not even going to happen by week 2. You just have to be consistent. Practice, practice, practice. And if they're not getting it, model it again. I spent one class period and we just came in, then went back out in the hallway, practice coming in again, went back in the hallway, practice coming in again, because they were crazy. So don't be afraid to spend more time in the beginning practicing those routines, because you are going to thank yourself come November when you're not having to worry about that anymore, because they know what's expected of them and it's a habit for them to do it, versus just kind of rushing through it at the beginning and then spending the entire year trying to get them to do what you want them to do, and they're just not going to do it, you know? Tip number 3, have consistent consequences. So again, this goes back to kind of like the rules and the expectations. Have an idea in your mind of what those consequences will be so that you can apply it the same to everyone. Of course, there are some instances, some students that you're going to change it a little bit. You know, every student is different. You know what you're doing. But across the board, you should have a pretty good idea of what consequences apply to what behaviors. That way, in the moment, you can give the consequence and kind of not be emotionally in it. I like the saying, respond, don't react. Because if you just respond with almost like an automatic response, an automatic consequence, there's no really wiggle room there. But if you react emotionally and you get upset with them or you get mad with them or whatever it is, you might give them a completely disproportionate consequence, or just your tone and the way that you give it is really going to ruin that relationship that you have with the students. So definitely focus on responding, not reacting. Here's another thing that's going to help with that. Don't take it personally. 9 times out of 10, these students are not personally attacking you. They don't wake up when their plan is, oh, I'm gonna really make Miss Adams mad today. That's not what they're doing. Whatever age they are, one, they're gonna try and push boundaries. They want to know what they can get away with. They want to know where the boundaries are. That's healthy for them. They want boundaries, so they're gonna push them so that they know where they are. And 2, there is so much going on in their life. You are not the center of their lives, okay? So don't take it personally when they're disrespectful, when they're acting out. You know, you have no idea what's going on, so just respond and don't react emotionally. Don't let it really get to you. You also want to apply these consequences fairly across the board. Like I was saying with respond, don't react. Don't have favorites, because the students can tell. They can tell. So one thing that I've done in the past is if I'm in a particularly good mood and someone does something they shouldn't do, it may not be that I have that student is my favorite, but I might just let it slide because, I'm in a good mood. That teaches them that there's not going to be a consequence for that behavior. And then when you get on to the next student for doing it, well, you didn't say anything when they did it. So even if you're in a good mood or a bad mood, apply your consequences fairly. It is just going to help so much in the long run. Tip number 4, connection reduces correction. Just a fun way of saying build relationships with your students. There is not one hard and fast right way to build relationships with your students. 1, all of your students are so different, and 2, all teachers are different. The way that I build my relationships with my students is different than the way the teacher down the hall is going to. So you just have to find what works for you and stick with it. And also accept that you're not going to win over every kid. There are just some kids that you won't be able to reach, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you should stop trying, but again, just don't take it personally. Don't put that burden on yourself to break through to every kid. I know we love those teacher stories of like, oh, this kid was misbehaving, da 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 da, but then I built a relationship with him, and then he really opened up to me about what's going on at home, and that's a great story. Sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes the kid is just not vibing with you and doesn't like your class or doesn't like the whatever. Like there are just some cases where you're not gonna get that breakthrough, and that's okay. If you were the one for every single student, that's exhausting. Like there are so many other people, they might just connect with someone else more. And again, that's okay. But some ways that you can build relationships with your students are greeting them at the door, learning their names. Oh my gosh, I don't care how many students you have, if you don't have their names learned and memorized after like a month, 6 weeks, what are you doing? What are you doing? How can you build a relationship with someone if you don't know their name? If you're like trying to have a conversation with someone and you just keep calling them like little pet names that teachers sometimes do if we forget their names, they're gonna pick up on that and they're gonna think like, this teacher obviously doesn't care about me, she can't even remember my name. So learn their names, do whatever you need to do. I'm terrible at names. I make it work. I study, I say their names out loud to their faces as often as I can to just cement that connection in my brain. If you can, go to some of their events. Obviously not every single one, you have a life, especially if they invite you personally to an event. Try and make an effort to go because they notice. Ask them questions about themselves and actually listen to their response. Be fully present. If someone comes to you and they're trying to talk to you about something, I know we can multitask. We can be typing on the computer and listening, but it looks like you don't care. So if you can, just give them your full attention for the 2-minute long conversation, and that's gonna go so far in building a relationship with that student. Love what you do, love teaching, but love who you teach more. Kids know when you don't care about them. Kids know when you are faking a relationship. Last but not least is tip 5, and that is to reinforce the positive. Praise publicly, correct privately. So if you see a student doing something that is good or they're on task or whatever, yeah, you can say that out loud. You can shout that out. You can, praise them publicly in front of people. But if you need to correct a student, calling them out in front of the class, it might feel good in the moment for you, or you might think that you're doing it as like a classroom management, like, oh, I'm gonna call out this student so everyone else knows not to do that. But that is so hurtful to that student and your relationship with that student. So as often as you can, correct privately. Obviously, you can just say, hey, get on task, or hey, focus up. That's fine. But as far as like getting into the specifics, do that one-on-one. I also, as often as possible, phrase things positively rather than negatively. For example, if I'm walking around and I know that a student is off task, I'm gonna go up to them, and instead of saying like, why are you off task? Or you need to focus, or whatever it is, I just ask them, what are you working on? Or let's see what problem you're on. Just kind of redirect, just framing it more in a positive way of, oh, instead of saying, hey, don't be rude, just say, please be nice. Just like the little things that you don't really think matter that much, those little things can add up. But that little redirection is my favorite tool ever. And I don't even think anyone taught me that. I just kind of started doing it one day, and when my principal pointed it out, he was like, hey, that's really cool that you do that. And I was like, oh, yeah. I wasn't even like aware that I was doing it. It was just it came naturally to me. So anyway, those are my 5 tips to a great year. If you have any questions, or if you are a veteran teacher and you have more suggestions, more tips, put them in the comments for all of the new teachers, and for me too, because I'm only on year 3, I'm still learning. This is my first year in high school, so I am always welcoming advice, tips, all of that stuff. New teachers, if you have any questions, again, put them in the comments. Maybe other teachers can answer them, maybe I can answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got something helpful out of it. If you did, please like this video, and you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel so that I can see you in the next one. Mwah. Bye.